Madam Ambassador, thank you for having us here. We are talking about a very important subject. Turkey's military intervention into Syria has triggered a lot of reactions and repercussions all over the world. Can you please explain to us what Turkey hopes to gain from this military operation?
Turkey is currently fighting a number of terrorist organizations that present risk and threat to our national security. We have given our full support to all international efforts to eliminate terror threat since day one. During the last 2 years, especially from the east of river Euphrates, we have been exposed to over 100 cases of hostile acts by PYD-YPG, the Syrian offshoot of the PKK terrorist organization. Our talks with our allies on the establishment of a safe zone with the view to addressing our legitimate security concerns and sustaining the fight against Daesh has remained inconclusive. We could no longer tolerate the presence of an armed terrorist organization at our borders. Against this backdrop, the Turkish Armed Forces launched Operation Peace Spring. Operation Peace Spring is carried out with well-defined, clear, and limited objectives. The objectives of the operation is to ensure Turkey's border security, neutralize terrorists in the region, and prevent the creation of a terror corridor across our southern border, and establish a safe zone so as to facilitate the return of Syrian refugees to their home. The operation is carried out on the basis of international law in accordance with the right to self-defense as enshrined in Article 51 of the UN Charter and relevant Security Council resolutions. And our relevant authorities and diplomatic missions have informed timely all relevant allies and partners, including the UN Secretary General and Security Council, NATO, and the Syrian regime also have been informed through their consulate in Istanbul.
We also have to talk about the reactions from the major diplomatic quarters that altogether point to the delicate equilibrium there in Syria, and that this military operation could endanger that equilibrium. What is your reaction to this criticism?
Turkey is among the net contributors of stability in Syria. We have so far supported all multilateral efforts to give an end to the ongoing conflict and participated in all initiatives to this end. We are among the guarantor states of the Astana process, which aims to facilitate a political solution through dialogue. The risk factors against the restoration of stability in Syria are the separatist and radical terrorist organizations on the ground. Among these, the PYD-YPG and the Daesh come to the forefront. Viable peace and lasting stability in Syria depend on the protection of territorial integrity and unity, which is only possible through the elimination of all terrorist groups and organizations.
Worries about the future of the fight against Daesh regarding these military operations are in the core of the criticism against Turkey. How does Turkey evaluate the Daesh threat in this moment?
Turkey is firmly committed to fighting against terrorism originating from Syria. We have a proven track record in contributing to counter-terrorism efforts in Syria. We are a committed member of the global coalition against Daesh, and Turkey is the only country to put a chest-to-chest combat against Daesh with boots on the ground in the region. Turkey has conducted numerous operations against Daesh, and we have neutralized more than 4,000 Daesh terrorists on our own. Moreover, Turkey has already conducted 2 major counter-terrorism operations in northwest Syria. Having successfully concluded Operation Euphrates Shield in 2017 and Operation Olive Branch in 2018, Turkey cleared an area over 4,000 kilometers square from Daesh and PYD-YPG terror, allowing more than 360,000 Syrians to return to their homes in this area. Operation Peace Spring is a continuation of our efforts to put an end to the Daesh threat.
So in that regard, what is your reaction to the accusation that this military operation will affect the fight against Daesh conducted by the YPG militia?
Let me first underline a fundamental principle. Recruiting one terrorist organization to fight against other terrorist organization is neither appropriate nor sustainable. Hence, the basic approach adopted by our allies from the beginning was wrong. PYD-YPG cannot be an antidote to Daesh. It is brutal, extremely bloody, and very dangerous terrorist organization. PYD-YPG is after its own agenda, regardless of the international community's priorities. Therefore, they exploit any opportunity, any concession offered to them by any of our allies. In this regard, let me remind you that there is credible evidence that in November 2017, Daesh terrorists detained by PYD-YPG were released in exchange of infiltrating into Turkey or northwest Syria in order to conduct terrorist acts. Secondly, our goal to establish a safe zone will in no way diminish the fight against Daesh. We fought against Daesh in Jarablus. We arrested more than 5,000 and extradited or expelled more than 8,000 Daesh affiliated people and eliminated 3,000 of them in Jarablus area. We have done so far more than for the Syrian people and Syrian refugees for their safety and security than any other country. We are hosting about 4 million Syrian refugees and we have prevented them from Daesh attacks in Turkey as well as in the Syrian territories. So this fight will continue and as part of the international coalition against Daesh, we will continue to coordinate our efforts with other countries. Daesh is a common enemy and we fought against them. We will continue to fight against them.
What is Turkey's plan to control the Daesh prisoners held in captivity on those territories that will be cleared?
As President Erdogan stated during his phone conversation with President Trump, we will take over the custody of Daesh elements and their families, family members that are currently held in detention facilities and camps in areas to be freed from terror by this operation. As the only country engaged in chest-to-chest combat against Daesh in Syria, the future of detained Daesh terrorists is of paramount importance for Turkey. However, the root cause of this problem with Daesh prisoners is that their countries of origin do not want to take them back. As we reiterate frequently, countries of origin should accept their citizen foreign terrorist fighters and their families and take necessary measures for their prosecution, repatriation, and rehabilitation. So the only sustainable solution is repatriation of all foreign terrorist fighters by their countries of origin.
How is Turkey going to resettle Syrian refugees in the safe zone after the operation? Because we hear a lot of accusations about the demographic change.
We have 4 million Syrians. They fled unspeakable violence. We are hosting them, but the refugee or immigrants problem is not only Turkey's problem. It is an international crisis, and it is the biggest humanitarian crisis in recent history. If you look at most of our partners in the EU or our allies, you see that their only endeavor is to prevent the immigrants from coming to Europe. We are helping 4 million Syrians in Turkey and added to another mass of 3 million who were internationally displaced on the Syrian side. So we want to create conditions for them to go back to where they came from. We are not going to force anybody to go anywhere if they don't want to go, and we are not interested in changing the demographics in the east of Euphrates or any part of Syria. In fact, it was PYD-YPG that changed the demographics by occupying Arab villages and towns, by forcing other Kurds who do not subscribe to PKK's ideology. Some fled to Turkey, some went to somewhere else in Syria. We want to make sure they go back to their towns and villages in Syria voluntarily and safely.
Within the mainstream media, we often see the difference between Turkey's assessment of the PYD-YPG as a terrorist organization and that of the most of the UE member states and allies in the accepting it as such. They intend to make a separation between the PKK and the PYD-YPG. Therefore, Turkey is accused of fighting against Kurds. Can you please elucidate the indicators behind Turkey's clear and differentiating stance in this matter?
During the last 2 years, especially from the east of River Euphrates, we have been exposed to more than 100 cases of attacks or hostile acts by PYD-YPG, the Syrian offshoot of PKK, which is designated as a terrorist organization by the EU and NATO. Through tunnels dug by PYD-YPG along the bordering areas in this region, explosives and ammunition have been smuggled to Turkey to be handed over to the PKK terrorist organization. PYD-YPG has perpetrated terrorist attacks also within Syria and against Syrians. Northwest Syria is a particular case in point, and so far more than 200 PYD-YPG attacks have been recorded according to PYD-YPG affiliated open sources. Moreover, there has been growing evidence about PYD-YPG's various human rights violations and demographic engineering in areas under its control. Coming to the second part of your question, no, of course, we are not fighting against the Kurds. That's very clear. We are fighting against the PYD-YPG terrorism. PYD-YPG does not represent all Kurds. Currently, more than 300,000 Syrian Kurds are taking refuge in Turkey, most of whom fled from the tyranny and crimes committed by PYD-YPG, including forced conscription, intimidation of dissidents, and recruitment of child soldiers.
We also have to talk about that social media posts alleging that Turkey is targeting civilians.
This is an operation against terrorism, but also a war of communication. We live in an age of hybrid threats. Disinformation and fake news are the mostly employed methods by terrorists and asymmetric groups. However, our authorities have so far refuted these baseless allegations. The operation Peace Spring is limited to a counter-terrorism operation, as was the case with operations Euphrates Shield and Olive Branch that we conducted in 2017 and 2018. Only terrorist elements and their hideouts, shelters, emplacements, weapons, vehicles and equipment are targeted, and almost no civilian casualties occurred in those operations. We aim to give a chance to as many displaced Syrians as possible, include Kurds, Arabs, Christians alike, to return to their ancestors' land after having been subject to ethnic cleansing by PYD-YPG.
So how long is this operation going to last? It's important to know this matter.
We intend to continue the operation until all terrorists have been wiped out of the region. Our border security has been ensured and local Syrians have been liberated from the tyranny of PYD-YPG as well as Daesh threat.